This episode of the CUInsight Experience podcast is sponsored by Trellance Cooperative Holdings Incorporated. Trellance is the parent company behind some of the most trusted credit union tech providers, such as Rise Analytics, ProBridge, and Optiri. By providing tech to credit unions and investing in new solutions, Trellance aims to create growth opportunities for the entire industry and to empower credit unions to embrace innovative new technology. Learn more at trellance.com.
Welcome to episode 238 of the CUInsight Experience. I'm Randy Smith, one of the co-founders of CUInsight.com. And as always, I'm joined by my favorite co-host, my favorite leadership thinker, and my favorite human, Jilly Nowacki, founder and CEO of Zealyst.
I like that introduction. Thanks, Randy. It's good to be back.
Yeah, we took a week off on holidays. We were in Europe, so I'm saying holiday all of a sudden. This season, we've been exploring what it means to lead with purpose. We've talked about moving forward, finding rhythm, collaboration, values. And today we're talking about something every leader experiences, whether they're ready or not, transition.
Because leadership isn't static. Titles change, teams change, organizations evolve. Sometimes we choose those changes, and sometimes they choose us. Either way, the leaders who thrive aren't the ones who avoid transition. They're the ones who learn how to navigate it.
Purpose might give us direction, but transition often tests whether that purpose is real.
Exactly. The question isn't whether you'll experience change. It's how you'll lead through it without losing yourself or the people who are counting on you. And I can't think of a better guest for this conversation than Kelly Botti, President and CEO of Trumark Credit Union.
Kelly, welcome to the CUInsight Experience. We're so excited to have you here, and I'm so excited to meet you. We were just talking before we hit record that it's amazing that our paths haven't crossed before.
It's truly a wonder. It's really, I was probably avoiding you, to be honest.
Yeah, that makes sense. Smart, see? Got a good one on there.
So grateful to be here this morning.
Oh, this is going to be fun. So just to open, transitions for some of us can be exciting. But Joe and I talk often about liking change, but we know sometimes we can be the weird ones on that. But they can also be uncomfortable. Before we get into the leadership, when you hear the word transition, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
I think when I hear the word transition, the first thing that comes to mind for me is internal change. I actually have a physical feeling when you say the word transition. I feel that the sense of growth, I think you feel the difficulty of it. It's almost like you're struggling through it a little bit. And I think that's part of what transition means. There's a natural struggle in because you're facing two different versions of yourself. And the transition is the in-between, that bridge of who you were and who you will be, which is uncomfortable, I think, for many people.
I like that's making me think of caterpillar to butterfly vibes right there, Kelly. That that time in the cocoon may not be.
But not every transition is that cute, Jill.
True. And one thing I've noticed about those kind of when we talk about leadership transitions, and I think, Kelly, this goes to what you're saying about a lot of it's happening internally too. It's not always visible. It's not always about getting a new title. Sometimes it also involves sort of letting go of who you used to be, that old identity, and stepping into the new one with that. This is a place too where I think, you and I have had conversations before about how our identity is shaped when you also maybe carry that sort of extra label. So maybe you're a young leader, or you're a female leader. Mm-hmm. And I've shared with you that there were times when I felt like I wasn't as authentic to myself earlier on because I was kind of trying to make up for something. Mm-hmm. So with that sort of tee up on it, what can you share about how you've made these transitions over your career and how it's impacted your leadership identity?
I love that you just said the word authenticity, because this has been something that has been on my mind a lot, and something I'm working on with my own executive coach, because it's very hard when you are a labeled leader, like a young leader or a female leader, right? There's a lot of adaptation that you have to do in order to be respected in the rooms that you are in. And I think that makes authenticity feel very hard internally while projecting authenticity outward. And what that really, I think actually is a little bit of masqueraded people pleasing. And so when you are it's really easy because I know for myself, I'm very good at reading a room. I'm very good at reading a situation. It's a super skill of mine to be able to understand what is needed from me in that moment and be what's needed. So people can walk away feeling, oh, she is so authentic. I was able to connect with her. I was able to be myself around her. That's great. But internally for me, it's not aligned. And so I think that is so much of my leadership arc going through the last several years. I was an executive at 27. And so when you're carrying that amount of responsibility before you have the emotional maturity behind it, it's a very hard place to be authentic. So I think that's a lot of what I'm learning about, the transitory growth that I continue to be in is just like, okay, well, how do I find peace in myself and be at peace with myself in the situations that I'm in? And I think that's really authenticity.
Do you find that it gets any easier as you are in the position longer and as you do kind of, because it's been 3 years now that you've been the CEO? 4 years. Woo. Mm-hmm. So as you you're getting into a point where I'd say you're kind of becoming more tenured in your position there too.
Mm-hmm. Wild statement you have there, but yeah.
Well, I think when you look at turnover currently, 4 years, you're a pretty senior person in the room at that point. So.
You're going to these CEO roundtables and people are like, oh, she got a new elder.
Here's Kelly. Ask her. She knows. So,
Do you see yourself settling into it more as time goes on? Because I will say, and I appreciate so much that you identified it as a super skill, because when we talk about things like, I'm moving away from using the term, I know it's often used, but that idea of executive presence into this idea of like influence on that. And we know that in order to have effective influence, you do need to be thoughtful about how you're showing up. You do need to connect with people in a way they want to be connected with. And there's a balance there because you have to do it without being a chameleon, without being inauthentic, without having Jill experience one version of Kelly while Randy experiences another. And how have you seen sort of the learnings over time, I guess, with that?
Yeah, I think that's really interesting to me because when we talk about influence has been something that has been a real interesting journey for me. So I am an attorney by trade. So influence is my whole career. It's analysis and influence. That's what you're trained to do. But influencing in the role that I'm in now is very different than influencing as a general counsel. And you don't necessarily know that until you're in the role. There's a lot of learning that just happens on the job from that perspective. And I think one of the things that I've learned about that, about the presence is the more you are fighting to prove yourself in the room that you're in, the more distracted you are from the issue that you're trying to influence outcome over.
Yeah.
And the least authentic, it probably comes across, I would think, too, just from personal experience.
Because it's grandstanding.
Yeah.
Right? We're like, look at me, look at my brand, look at who I am. And
look at how smart I am. Yep.
Yeah, I made that mistake over and over and over again, as a, young CEO. And I just made the assumption that these people that I'd worked with for almost 10 years knew and understood me and I had immediate credibility. And I had great credibility in my prior role, but I really misunderestimated that I needed credibility in my new role. And that takes time and relationship building and maturation. And I just tried to do so much so quickly to prove myself and to feel confident in my role that I think I missed out on a lot of opportunities to just settle into it and allow myself to just be in the transitory period and learn and get the feedback I needed to apply it quicker. Once I accepted that, I think it was much easier actually to understand what my role is in influencing as a CEO. It's very different.
Something's been sticking with me that you said earlier about you became an executive at 27. And, that idea, and maybe this is really resonating with me because of the fact that Jill and I just spent 2 weeks with 18-year-olds who are about to go off to college. So that idea that even in our 20s, we're not fully formed yet. Because we had many conversations about, they think they have this figured out, but they have no idea yet. So, just in the nicest way. So it's kind of circling way back, but this idea that, and I know personally, I believe I'm a more authentic version of myself today at 52 than I was at, say, I know for sure at 22, but probably even 32 and hopefully even 42. But like that, it takes life, it takes experience to, and maybe even it takes the confidence to be like, yeah, this is who I am, that we don't have early on.
But don't you think it's experience?
I do. I think a lot of it is. Yeah.
It's lived experience because I was having this great conversation with my coach yesterday, and she was like, this is why I tell coaches you can't coach people that much older than you because you don't have the same you don't have the same life experience.
Interesting.
That is interesting. Yeah.
And I thought that was a very interesting thought. And I remember very distinctly when I was named CEO, I had a banker friend that I knew much older than me, was on the path to retirement. And he was like, you have all the intellectual capability to do this job, but none of the life experience. And so you are going to agonize over every decision that you make because you don't have that life experience. And he's like, my only advice to you is surround yourself with the life experience. And that was amazing advice for me. And so my team here is so tenured and so experienced and such good moral fiber, such great energy, and they're free in their mentorship of me. And so I think what that allows me to do is have this space to just sort of be on my journey and know that I have the right perspectives in the room. So I'm not clouding my own decision making through a lens of inexperience. Because I just haven't lived enough yet, right?
But that takes a certain maturity to be able to accept that. Because I think if we go back to when we were all 27 and trying to prove ourselves, we wanted to show that we should be in the room. And that way we're...
Do you have an experience that comes to mind to you that you cringe about now? You're like, oh man.
Oh, I do.
Gosh. Do you?
I do. My first job in my career was working for the Montana Credit Union Network. And so it was like a smaller group of folks, right? I think there were 7 or 8 of us on the team only. And so it wasn't really very hierarchical. I talked to the executive vice president who'd been there for 35 years, on a regular basis. I can think back to, there was something, and it was so minor. But it was like an office, because we were a small team, we were in a small office, we shared responsibilities like emptying the coffee carafe at the end of the day and making sure it didn't get left on. And so again, such a small, minor thing, but I was like, no, we said we were going to do it this way and somebody didn't do it. So I sent an all team email about we need to honor our responsibilities with the coffee carafe and was so self-righteous in my, who's the one who let the coffee burn last night? It really creates grand scheme of things that matter. I almost did it, Kelly. I was almost the first one to pull the expletive there. But in the grand scheme of things that don't really matter, do our credit union, our member credit unions care about the coffee? No, they care about advocacy issues, right? And so but in my mind, it was, we say we're going to do it. And that's kind of the life experience stuff where you're choose your battles. And this is not one to fight, right? But
you don't know what hills to die on.
Yeah. I think that's exactly it.
Yeah. And because so much of that is, can I be what somebody else needs me to be? It's always that when you're that young, you're okay, well, this is what a leader does. It's performative.
We hold people accountable. Not to that though.
Yes. It's everything that you especially when you're a high achiever, you're oh, I'm going to master this. I remember, and I'm talking about my coach all the time, she might as well have just joined us on this podcast. So I remember she said, she was oh, I've known only 5 really great leaders in my life. People I would consider really, really great leaders. And I was I will be on that list.
You're well, now you know 6.
I said, challenge accepted.
That's such an interesting thing because it leads into, from doing this podcast for a long time and all the people that we've met, most people that reach the CEO ranks have that very, younger in their career. There's a reason they got noticed. They got things done. They were the overperformers. And then all of a sudden you get to leadership positions where you're have to bring everybody else along. You can't just put your head down and do it yourself or the organization can't grow. I think that's a reoccurring conversation, right? And, I think back to being in the room and thinking that I had to have all the answers.
Mm-hmm.
When I was younger, it was like I couldn't say, I don't know, I'll figure it out. I'll get back to you. It was like, no, I got to have it, and so talking too much and listening not enough, which is still a struggle for me.
And what happens when you're fully authentic? You're able to listen. When you're at peace
Absolutely.
with yourself, you're able to listen. And I think like that when we talk about transitions, that was some of the hardest transitory work that I had to do, was understand that like it is no longer my job to solve the problems. It is my job to create the conditions where problems can be solved.
Yeah.
That was mind-blowing for me. Some of that was like me having to be disciplined enough to physically remove myself from rooms where I knew that I was just going to dominate with work. Because that was the only way I knew how to prove myself, was tangible output. Like the way that I equate it is like I was so good at sprinkling glitter on myself. Like I was like, oh, I can make things happen. Like I'm like, challenge accepted, hold my beer, I will do this shit. I was like, you hit your marks. Everything was like, it's like home run derby, like
Absolutely.
blowing it out of the park. And then what you realize is that it's not the glitter, right? It's like the magic inside. And that is, I think for me, as I'm going on my journey, it's like appreciating my own gifts in a way that's not tied to actual accomplishments.
One of the things, I think Faina Bonnie from Safe Credit Union, when she was on this podcast, she mentioned it, but I see it a lot in the coaching work that I do, where leaders really struggle when they go from that place of your value is the work you do to your value is the work you can get done through others. So like Faye's actual quote was like, I do nothing, but I'm responsible for everything. I'm sure that's a little bit of a misnomer, but that idea of like, she's not underwriting a loan, but she's still responsible for loan growth on that side of it. And I think that becomes such a leadership challenge for people the higher up they go in an organization, like letting go of that. Like, I know I'm good because I underwrote more loans than everybody else did. That's my evidence of success. And I see it all the time with leaders. Once they get into the next level and something starts to be uncomfortable, they revert back to, but I know how to manage the investment portfolio. So even though I'm the CEO and I have a CFO, I'm going to go focus on this instead. And it's like, no. We need you up here contributing at your highest value. And it's not that anymore, but that becomes such a challenge.
I get this feeling that like, oh, your job as a leader is to sink the long putt, but your job is to caddy.
Yeah.
That's a good one. I love that.
That's like the real hard part of it. Like that's your job. So it's very challenging.
So in that situation, because one of the key things is you're not just caddying for one golfer. Like you're caddying for the whole crew of golfers out there, and you want them aligned. You want them moving forward. Shit. What was that?
It's some exhausting shit.
Yes. So how do you make sure your communication is being handled in a way that you're creating confidence? You've set, they know what direction you're expecting them to go, but you're not telling them what to do. You're not giving them every answer. You're not solving every problem, but you're still setting that primary vision and that they can align around.
So my Achilles heel is like, I think my mind is readable by everybody that I interact with. It creates a lot of challenges for me.
What do you mean you don't know? I was thinking that.
Yeah, like it's a wonder. I think when it comes to alignment, some of what I've learned. So I think one of actually the best things that has ever happened to me in life is that I have still to this day never managed anyone younger than me. I've never led anyone younger than me or managed ever in my whole career. I've had one person that was the same age as me, and then everybody else has been older. And there's something that comes from that is very interesting when it comes to like how you lead. It's like you learn how to get out of people's way so they can do the work that they know how to do. And so my job is more like bringing in like a bag of marbles onto the table and like making sure that like one's not running away. And so you're always kind of like regathering everybody back in, making sure everyone's on the same page and executing, and then going from there. The challenge is, I think, when you're dealing with executive leadership teams, everybody's a star. If they aren't a star, they shouldn't be there. And it's also not a development role, which Jill, you and I have talked about a lot, right? Like I'm not developing my leadership team. They should be on their own journey of self-development and continued evolution, but I'm not developing them to get there. They are there and they're executing. And so I think that's very different when you're talking about alignment because they all have agendas and they all have things that need to get done. And so the way that I've approached that, and I've had a lot of challenges in this area because I think for me, it's like I have a big vision and sometimes my big vision like wasn't as well articulated as I thought it was. And then I went back for myself and I just refocused everybody in mission. And so I think what has been very impactful for me as a leader is like, I do think my central role is to bring our team back to mission. And when they are reminded of that in that space, I think they're able to execute with greater priority, which is their job. Like my job is not make sure that their execution gets done, but I'm very blessed. Like I don't have to follow up on anything. My team is autonomous. They get things done. They know how to prioritize work. My job is to make sure they have the resources that they need. They have the cross-departmental collaboration that they need, that they're advocated for, that they feel good as leaders, and that they have a place that they can like put down the bullshit they have to deal with every now and then. My number one greatest business skill is my sense of humor.
I'm trying to convince Randy that I'm hilarious.
I just like make jokes all the time.
I just love that both of you. That's something Jill says. She's like, "Well, I'm really funny." I'm just like, "That's amazing." So,
if you know, you know. And my sister always tells me, she's like, "You're not funny in real life. I'm funny in real life. Like you're funny." She's like, "You're business funny."
I'm funny in real life.
Yeah. I'm like, okay, cool. I'll just over here in the corner.
I think you're funny in real life, Kelly.
Thank you, Jill. I think you're funny.
That's good. Okay, so let me bring in the marbles a little bit here. So the leadership transitions can also be personal. And I mean, I think we've touched on that some, but I think it's a really important part when we think of the listeners to this podcast, right? Like they're often going through, I'm sure we're all going through those transitions at some point. Have there been any practices or hacks that you've picked up along the way to kind of keep you grounded, even when transitions are happening and things feel uncertain?
No, I would honestly say I've probably botched every single one of those transition points from an emotional health standpoint. I think it's so easy to focus on the work and so easy to sacrifice yourself. And I think that's I had so many other CEOs when I was making my transition say, you don't have to do it the way that I did. There's a better way to do it. There's a real better way to, but I think your personal sense of urgency is so deep when you're going through the transition of a role change. If we're just talking about it as a role change, when you're going through the transition of a role change that everybody can warn you, but you're not going to listen to anybody. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like when you become a parent and everybody's got all this great advice for you, oh, enjoy it because it goes fast. And you're like, shut up. I have a baby that's crying in the middle of the night. I'm tired. And this is fucking awful. I can't handle it. Right. And that's exactly what any type of role transition is like. And then I think what happens afterwards when you have made the role transition, when you've become a parent, when you've taken a new role, then you settle in and it's you come up for air and then you see the wreckage and then you're like, okay, if you were right the whole time.
And then you tell the new people that, the new CEO.
And then you do the annoying thing where you're like, oh, you only get this time once.
Yeah.
And you just repeat it back to people, and that's a cycle of life. So I would say, for me, I would say a year after I got the role, I was burnt out. I was emotionally exhausted. I was really unsure of myself. And I had to really take a hard look at myself and say, is this worth it? Number one, is this what the job means? Does the job mean I just don't exist? I have no identity outside of this role. Or is this my opportunity to do something about it? And so, for me, like I have a great support team. Like it's my therapist, my executive coach, the girl who injects Botox into my face, my hairdresser, you have a whole team of people, but you also have to open yourself up to the power of having people who can give you perspective in your life. And that requires a great deal of vulnerability, because most people, when they see your role as a CEO, they make assumptions about you and then they hold themselves back. Like they don't tell you the truth. And I'm really grateful that my sister is like my beacon of truth. Like she's like, I cannot wait to give a retirement speech for you so everyone knows what an idiot you are. Like, the jig will be up. But she's also the first person to say, like, you need to take care of yourself. You're not doing, like, she holds me accountable all the time. Like, she is not a yes person. My team, like they're the first to tell me, they're like, you don't look like yourself today. Like, what can I take off your plate? You have these spaces where you can do that. And then I think for me, it's doing the work. So many people avoid the emotional work. And the reality is, I am responsible for 450 families that work here and 155,000 families in Philadelphia. I can't go to my kid's soccer game without somebody saying they're a member of Trumark. Like that's a big responsibility and it wears. It wears. And I think you have to have that sense of both freedom to be yourself in certain places, and you have to have because you can't be yourself all the time. You just can't. Like that's not, there's a lot of things I think in my head that I have to
filter out.
And like, I literally asked my accountant if Botox is a business expense because like I speak from reacting.
Because I want to make sure you don't see my furrowed brow.
Right. I want you to know that my face is neutral at all times. And forever 37. That's the rule. What can you do? But I think that's what it is. Like, I don't think there's any advice during the transition. I think it's just, you have to be willing to do the work and face yourself in the mirror.
I think the point you're making there is so true, though. And it's something that Jill and I have talked about a lot. Like, I think back to many of our walks and just the self-awareness to do the personal work and finding out that maybe doesn't seem like it's not business, but, we still are whole humans and we have to be in good places to lead others.
But you guys have both seen some shit, you know what I mean? And so I think for you both, like when you sit in your pain, you can see others that also sit in their pain.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I think too, having those truth tellers is so important. And, Randy is certainly one of mine because I think, Kelly, when you're talking about, you go through that, like that transition and you're like, no, I've got to get everything done. I'm responsible for everyone. Mm-hmm. And I think the first thing we tell ourselves is, well, no one else can see this level of stress I'm carrying right now. Like when you were feeling that level of burnout, that questioning, you were probably telling yourself at least up to a certain point, well, I feel this way, but it's okay because I'm not letting others see it. And like others are seeing it, but not because you're saying, hey, I'm burned out, I'm stressed out, but because they're seeing you make decisions or, in Randy's case, he sees it when I become less patient and more irritable with, like, not necessarily with him, but just like about things. Like,
is that like when you're hungry too, or just?
No, but I've realized lately it's when I'm hot. With that broken AC, I do notice that like I get irritable when I'm hot, and so. But like I came home from the gym probably in May when I was like dealing with something, and I was so irritated that the person next to me at the gym, like we do Orange Theory, we're all supposed to be doing the same thing, and this person decided she was going to take 2 rounds on the treadmill instead of go to the rower, and I was like,
really, there's nothing more annoying.
I was like, what is she doing? So I come home after the class is over, and I'm like, and their lady next to me, she did this, and it's like, okay, did it change your workout? Well, no. He's like, I think maybe there's something else going on here. There. But it is, I think that becomes, we tell ourselves, well, it's fine that I'm not taking care of myself. It's fine that I'm feeling this burnout because I'm sacrificing so everyone else is fine. And the people around us are like, this is not fine. Like we're not okay with how you are right now.
Everyone can sense it. And like the thing that came to mind when you were just telling that great story is grace. As a leader, your ability to offer grace is like your most powerful tool. And so like I really, and I talk about this a lot with my leadership team, like grace is what is my compass. Like if I can't offer that, then I know that I'm not doing my best as a leader, because you have to be able to assume positive intention. You have to be able to understand that mistakes happen. You have to understand that expecting perfection is really detrimental to an organization. Like all of those things are true. And I think when I know that, like what you're saying there is like, if you were in a more regulated state, you could have said, oh, that girl just needs to run another one out, you know?
Or be like,
right?
why
Like,
didn't I skip the rower too and just run? So that's amazing.
Like,
Absolutely jealousy.
Maybe my girl needed a hug. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, you know, I don't know. You're able to see that more clearly when you are regulated and you're self-contained. I have one son that thinks exactly the way I do, which is great and makes my life very easy. And then there's my other son is he's super emotional, intelligent, very logic minded, and he's very perceptive. And so like, there's no getting away with anything. Like his brain just like rapid fire conclusions, everything. And I'm like, oh, like it's tough. And he's 12 now. And so now he's moody. And so I'm like, oh yeah. So he goes, I was like, Jackson, I was like, you have to really learn how to control, like understand how your energy impacts other people. Like that's a big important part of like growth and understanding, is that like your energy has the ability to sort of change a room. And so like being in control of your energy is really important. And he was like, I need you to explain that to me. I don't follow like what that means exactly. And I said, well, if you're sad and you're like sitting in your sadness, the whole rest of the room is going to accommodate around your sadness. Right. And I said, it's okay to be sad. I was like, but when you dwell in it and you don't do anything to bring yourself out of it, that's where we get stuck as people. And that influences connection with people. Then I like thought to myself, and I was like, am I doing that? I really had to ask myself, you know, because I've been going through, you know, a big transition for myself right now emotionally. Like I'm doing a lot of work on myself. I'm really feeling like a lot of growth. And I was like, am I doing that? Like, am I aware of how my own energy is impacting the rooms that I'm in? And am I what is my choice? Like, what am I choosing to be overwhelmed by it? Or am I going to choose to say, this is just life? And like, that's why I said to Jackson, I was like, life is going to life. You're going to have some really good days. You're going to have some really good years, and you're going to have some ones that suck the living life out of you. And you have to understand that like, you've got to live through that. And living through that means being aware and finding joy and finding peace and like finding the things that bring you back to center, all while life is lifing around you. And I think that's very true in my role as a leader. Like there's always going to be quarters that we crush, and there's always going to be quarters where my board's like, what's going on? And my responsibility is to lead through that with the right energy.
On both sides. Yep.
Yeah. Jackson's wise.
Okay.
Well, it's so interesting using your son as an example there, but we've all been around people on both sides of that, right? Like that some can just suck all the joy out of a room and others can add joy to a room. And it might be the same person at different times. But to be able to manage those emotions, and personally, I think important is that idea that you might not be able to change exactly what today is, but you can sure like take steps in the right direction. Like you don't have to sit in the misery that we feel. You know, we could kind of change our life to.
Well, yeah, like my coach again
do the work.
Yesterday, you know? She reminded me of like the loci beads. And she was like, well, the loci beads, like, do you remember those, like the bracelets they're like little like beads? Look it up. I'm not paid to sponsor this, but look it up. And it's like sand from the Dead Sea and like water from Mount Everest. It's something like that. But like the whole design of it is to remind that when you're up, you need to remember humility. And when you're down, you need to remember hope. And like that is like a very powerful energy sequence.
And keep the grace in both spots, right? To circle back to what you said about grace. That stuck with me.
Yeah. I mean, that idea of grace too. And I think that to me, that's I feel like it's really cliche when people are like, well, you have to put your own oxygen mask on first. Cause it's like, well, of course you do, but come on, like we're not all going to stop and like wallow in self-care. But like when you're looking at that idea of being like, are you in a place where you have the ability to extend grace to others? And I talk a lot about this Harrison assessment we use. And the Harrison assessment, a lot of leaders I have are really high on this value of self-improvement and fairly low on this self-acceptance. And they'll say to me, well, Jill, that's what gives me my edge. Never being good enough is the thing that keeps me growing, keeps me moving. And I say, that's fine until you're a leader. And that same way you look at yourself becomes how your team is feeling you're looking at them. And nothing they ever do is good enough. And nothing they ever do is worth celebrating because you could do better. Like, sure, we we hit the goal, but credit union down the street did twice as much as we did. So, and it's like, well, but like, that's our goal. Why are the metrics changing after we've accomplished them on that? And so that idea of like that level of acceptance, we do need to accept how we're showing up so we can extend that same grace to our teams too.
Well, and I think to your point, Jill, like that's such a great point, because I think what ends up happening is, again, this misnomer, like that the underdog is the story. And like, I had a very difficult childhood. I had a very tough origin story. And like, I used to hang on to that story like it was my hero's arc. Like I was like, I came from the high. And like, that was like all my motivation. And, you know, through doing a lot of work on myself, I was always looking for like, I was a pole vaulter. I was like always looking for the next thing, always looking for the next thing. And then what that does around you is just makes people feel on edge. Like that's the mindset of what's expected. And so instead of just incremental, continuous growth and improvement, which is the name of the game. Listen, at this point, I would do anything to have had the childhood that my kids have. So I've released that pain as a motivator. But I think what you're hitting on is the mindset. It's the mindset of what you put out into the world and how that influences everyone around you. So if your sense of urgency is uncalibrated, everyone around you's sense of urgency is going to become uncalibrated. If they know that you're going to have a big reaction, they're going to have a big reaction because they're matching you.
Yeah. Or they're going to be braced for it, right? And like on guard and
Yes. I do want to ask a question for you because you're going through a big transition, Jill. And so what are you learning through this transition in your career?
So this is kind of one that I've been reflecting on this week, and I'm sure next week it'll be a different big lesson. And 2 weeks ago, it was probably a different big lesson. But we do a workshop at Zealyst where we talk about change management. And we use a change map. And one of the boxes on that change map is stakeholders and like how you're engaging your stakeholders with change. And what's really interesting is, so I made this big transition, and there's a balance between like confidentiality and like things that just can't be said legally, ethically, morally on like as you're getting ready. So like if you were going through a huge merger or something, when you're in the first stage of the conversation, you can't tell all 450 employees that you're doing this like discovery work, for example, right? And yet then it comes time to actually make the change. And if people feel like they're blindsided by it, they feel like it's harder to get them to come along with that, right?
Yeah.
So I've been really reflecting on how do you include people in a process so they don't feel like something happened to them, but still respect all of the boundaries that you as a leader are legally, morally, ethically obligated to respect on that. And that's something that, I mean, you know, you look at the Zealyst team, we went from 0 to 7 team members overnight, 3 days maybe, I think. I mean, it was like being able to say, hey, do you want to come join this brand new company and start here? And have people say, I got an offer this morning and I signed it by 4 p.m. Like that's a huge, like, oh, we're doing this? Okay. It's caused me to reflect on like, how did we achieve that level of buy-in that built an aligned team overnight without having stepped into anything that couldn't be stepped into ahead of time with that. And that's where...
How? Like, where do you think that comes from?
I think it comes from a consistent relationship of like candor and transparency over time. If you're
authenticity.
Yeah, right. But if you're transparent over time, and it always goes back to like this team of people who works with me at Zealyst, they know my why. I have my moments where I'm sure they're like, tone down the urgency. no, Jill, we don't need to respond to your emails at 4 a.m. and midnight both. I know they see that level of urgency. I also know, though, that they are so clear. Like when I talk about, the work we do is for credit unions because we truly believe that people can find joy in their jobs. And when they do, it can change the way an organization serves. And everyone on our team really believes in the power of credit unions to change members' lives, to create economic stability. And so I think what it comes down to is if I say, hey, we're going to do this now, I'm surrounded with people who believe that my why is so anchored and so strong. So even if I'm doing things that maybe they don't have the full story on why we're doing it, they buy into the why behind it strong enough that they can come along with that.
Yeah, I love that.
So I'm watching the time. That's my job.
That's your job.
Jill and I are not. So
that's the only reason I'm really here. So I just get to push record and watch the time, right? So, but just a couple of quick kind of wrap up questions as we go through, and I'd throw it out to both of you. Is what's something that you wish you had been maybe? I don't want to say told even. I don't like that, but like because we've all were told a lot of things in our earlier leadership career. But like, what's something now that you wish you would have realized earlier in life when it comes to leading in that journey?
I don't think I would have listened to anything anybody told me, to be honest, but I would say, I just think, I would say the advice that I was given that I wish I listened to more deeply is just to go on the journey. I really was thinking of it as a destination, as a stop. Like, okay, once I got to this point, then it was going to be smooth sailing from there. It's always like, if I just, and like,
there's always another just.
Yeah. And then like, it's like that adage, like you get to the top of the mountain, then you look up and there's a higher mountain. If I just sort of appreciated a pace of a journey, I do wish that I paid more mind to that, I think. And I was given that advice and I did ignore it.
Yeah. I felt
mine would be to listen more and talk less. I still struggle with it, but.
Jill, what about you?
Kelly, I feel like mine's really aligned with you. And not so long ago, I was on Tansley Stearns does a podcast and I was on her podcast as her guest. And she asked a question like that. And I was like, I guess the thing I wish that I had known, like I wish I could have bought into the idea that it really didn't have to be as urgent as it felt. Like when becoming an executive in my 20s, like feeling like, okay, cool. Like this is a long journey that we're on here. We've got time. On the other hand, I was super excited to end up becoming a CEO when I became a CEO. And it's like, well, but I like the pace of my leadership journey as far as when I accomplished some of the things. And so it's not like I was like, oh, well, I wish I would have waited until 40 to become a CEO. Like I'm thrilled with the fact that. So I'm like, I mean, I guess maybe I could have lost less sleep over things maybe on if I had bought into it. But I'm like, I just don't know. I'm sure people said these things to me. And in my head, I probably thought, yeah, but this is my journey and I'm moving at this pace on it anyway.
And maybe that's the lesson. Like maybe the lesson is just to give people the space to just go on their own journey. Like everyone's going to figure it out or they won't.
All right, Kelly, before we go, we just want to ask one final question. So here's my question for you on this one. When you think about leaders who are really leading well, so maybe that, your coach said she's got 5 good leaders. What do you think, like when you think of those good leaders, what's one characteristic they almost always have?
The best leaders I know that it's not about them. I think it's just that simple. They are no ego amigos for all my Peloton riders out there. But
Perfect. Kelly, thank you so much. I really enjoyed this conversation today. I think it was authentic, transparent. We might have earned ourselves that little E designation on it too for explicit content.
Yeah. That was my goal.
These transitions, these changes, every one of them is an opportunity to learn something more about ourselves. And I think this conversation today was a really good opportunity to spend a little time in self-reflection, thinking about ourselves as well as the people we're leading and how we continue along this journey.
There's something that kept sticking out to me was that idea of, and Jill, you said it when Kelly had asked you the question, your team knows your why, right? And like, if we know our purpose, and Kelly, you said it earlier in the show too, about bringing people back to the mission. They all know what they're doing, that you don't have to develop them, micromanage them or anything, but it is making sure that everybody's back to the mission. So that was something that just kept sticking out to me throughout the whole show, is how that seemed to be a central point.
Awesome. Yeah. Kelly, thank you so much for spending the time with us, for sharing your experiences and your wisdom with our listeners.
And that will do it for this week's episode. As always, we'll link to Kelly and everything we talked about today in the show notes and our sponsor.
If you enjoyed today's conversation, we'd love it if you'd subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, share this episode with someone else navigating a leadership transition. And remember, leadership isn't about avoiding change.
It's about leading through it.
Keep moving forward.
Until next time, take care, everybody. Thank you for listening. Y'all rock. We appreciate you, and be well.
Thanks again to Trellance for sponsoring this episode of the CUInsight Experience podcast. To find out more about Trellance, visit trellance.com.